play a game?
Why, yes, I believe we shall.
Oh, I got a live one here.
Live from Little Rock, it's Shane Plays Radio, Geek Talk Radio, a journey into the things we love. I'm your host, Shane Stacks. Thanks so much for joining us. As always, got a very cool show for you today. Speaking of cool, it's not really cool outside. Zach's my producer. It's going to be mid-70s today. So we had a spring and then we got a cold snap and now we're back. So in the Central Arkansas, Little Rock area, it's nice. Thinking about taking my kid fishing this afternoon. He's 3. He's never fished before. So bet you he wants a Spider-Man fishing pole, Zach. So I hope we can, because if there isn't a Spider-Man fishing pole at Walmart now, I'm doomed. That's all I got to say. So I hope there's a Spider-Man fishing pole. I don't know. We'll see what happens. I'm of course your host, Shane Stacks. This is Shane Plays Geek Talk Radio, where we have fun. It's not just about games, although we often cover games. Today we've got a indie game development studio today that I will introduce to you here in a moment after the housekeeping notes. Don't forget that Shane Plays is live talk radio first, and it's a podcast second. So you can call me at 501-823-0965, or you can tweet me at Shane Plays. That's ShanePlays. Speaking of Shane Plays, the show notes for today's show right now are up on the blog at shaneplays.com. That's ShanePlays.com. And you can find links to our news items and then also information and links about our guest. So you definitely want to go check out the show notes. That's one thing I try to do. So if you're like, hey, what were they talking about? Or I want to know more about what they were talking about, you go to the show notes, shaneplays.com, and check that stuff out. Speaking of the blog, last week's show is archived on the blog. And that's something I do every week. The show does go out as a podcast in multiple venues, but I always make sure to put stuff on the blog. And last week, we talked exclusively about the Nintendo Switch, and that was, what'd you think about? I thought that show was a lot of fun, Zach. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah, and then we talked about the Switch again yesterday on the Dave Ellswick show.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that was cool. I'm intrigued. If I get, insert gut laugh here, time and or money, I may check out the Switch. I'm intrigued. I think it looks pretty cool. I'll ask our guests what they think about it, if they've been keeping up with it or not. So, I did mention the podcast. This show does go out as a podcast a few days after the live show on the blog at Shane Plays. It goes out on iTunes, Google Play Music, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, and other fine podcast directories. If our Patreon support hits a certain level, I'll probably put it out on SoundCloud as well. So, because right now the Patreon supporters are covering the cost of putting it on Libsyn, which is the service I use to podcast with. So I appreciate our Patreon supporters very much. As I often say, the show does have sponsors. I'm blessed to have them. I appreciate them very much, but they don't cover all the bills. So if you like Geek Talk Radio plus podcast, please consider supporting my Patreon at Shane Plays, or patreon.com/Shane Plays. Finally, Shane Plays is carried on Krypton Radio, 24-hour internet geek radio. It's really cool. Krypton Radio is sci-fi for your Wi-Fi. KryptonRadio.com. Got another one, just super quick announcement here, and then we'll get to our guest. This weekend here in Little Rock, and this is the stuff. I know a lot of people listen to the podcast, and I'm glad to have you. Love doing the podcast version. But one advantage to listening to the live show on the radio, if you happen to live in the local area, is that sometimes I'll announce news items that are very time sensitive. And this weekend, March 18th, today and tomorrow, March 19th, at the Holiday Inn Airport Conference Center, so the Holiday Inn out by the airport, is the very first Not Just Another Comic-Con. It's $10 for the weekend, both days, a lot of guests and that sort of thing. So if you're in the mood to go check out, it's a nice day, get on out there and do something, go check out Not Just Another Comic-Con. Hope it's successful. I love that we have more and more of that stuff here in the Central Arkansas area. Okay, with all of that out of the way, Zach, they may be too shy to talk on air. We'll find out, because the name of the studio is Shy Snake Games. So they may be kind of shy, but we'll find out. We'll see if they'll talk on air. Are Alex and Jason of Shy Snake Games with us?
Yes, we are.
Hey, that's Alex. Jason, are you there?
I am here.
All right, really glad to have you all. If I understand correctly, you're a husband and wife team. Is that correct?
That's right. That's what we are.
Well, cool. You know, I think you're the third husband and wife team that I've had. I don't know if you're familiar with Serpent and the Staglands.
Yes.
Yeah. So Well Not Studios. They've been on the show a couple times. I really love them. And then I can't believe the name is blanking me. They did the Quest for Glory series. Dang it. I can't believe they were one of my very first guests. They're a longtime husband and wife developer team. So anyway, we have an ongoing tradition here of husband and wife developer teams.
It works very well for us.
Yeah, good. Yeah. So welcome so much to the show. I'm really glad to have you. And what we're going to be talking about today after the news segment is you have a game called Spy DNA, which is an RPG. You're doing some cool, in-depth, unique stuff with it, and we will definitely talk about that. I've watched your videos. I've played with the demo. So I'm eager to talk to you about and get your perspective on the game and why you're doing it. One thing I'll tease people with, because radio is the art of the tease, is Jason said in one of the videos, he said, it's like Gran Turismo. It's a simulation and a game. So in Gran Turismo, you can either get super detailed with every little aspect of the car that's hyper realistic and simulated, or you can just jump in the car and drive. So I thought that was an interesting way to describe Spy DNA as far as, being sort of a combat tactical RPG. So we will definitely have time to talk about that. But first, we're going to have a quick news segment. I'll keep it brief so we can have plenty of time to talk about Spy DNA. Zach, turn on the super secret microphone in the newsroom. Well, there they go, working on Saturday. Hard working. Love those guys and gals in the newsroom. Sal is still wearing a fedora and chomping a cigar. He never likes it. He just chomps on it, Zach. I guess he just likes that affectation. Folks, remember, for every $1 of Patreon support we get, the news team gets a penny an hour raise. So it's a win-win for everybody. Okay, so first news item here. Now, obviously, Alex and Jason, you're gamers, obviously, making a game. Are you tabletop gamers, or are you exclusively video gamers?
I like to play both. I like playing cooperative tabletop games.
Yeah.
And I think Jason is mostly playing computer games these days.
Well,
okay.
I played a lot of computer games, and I also used to be a GM for pen and paper role-playing games.
Just out of curiosity, which pen and paper role-playing games did you play?
Well, as a player, I played a reasonable amount of Dungeons and Dragons, Shadowrun.
Yep.
As a GM, I ran a game called Living Steel, of all things. It's not very well known, but they try to be a hyper realistic RPG set in the distant future.
Okay. Well, the reason I'm asking is because our first news item is from Wizards of the Coast relating to Dungeons and Dragons. And, the new president at Wizards of the Coast is making a push for more digital support. And they're about to release an official app to support D&D campaigns called D&D Beyond. And they're working with a media company called Curse that's owned by Twitch that builds gaming management tools. So it's got all kinds of tools. It's got, there's supposedly all kinds of stuff in it to help both DMs and players. They're calling it a digital tool set that works with 5th edition called D&D Beyond. And you can sign up for the beta right now, which of course I did. I'm like, yeah, I got to play with that. So,
I got to play that too. That sounds awesome, actually.
Yeah, got to play with that. So, and it looks, a lot of times when tabletop companies get into apps, to be quite honest, they don't put out a very good app. Let's just be honest. But this looks pretty good. So, and I don't know if it's going to be free or not, but we'll find out. But right now there is a beta that people can sign up to. But for some reason, when first companies release apps as a first party, I don't know, a lot of times they're disappointing when it comes to D&D. And I'm not going to name any names. I'm not here to shame anybody, but I'm hoping this is good. So just wanted to throw, and that news item was from The Verge. You can go to the Shane Play show notes, follow the news item, and there's a link there at the bottom. You can go sign up for the beta if you want. Now this, I'm wondering, Jason, Alex, if y'all have heard of this, have you heard of this Kingsway game that's coming from Adult Swim sometime this summer?
I've heard of the name. I actually haven't looked at it in detail, and Jason is shaking his head. So he's the shy part of the Snake Studio.
Okay, he's the shy part. All right. So here's the deal. It's called This is from Geek and Sundry, and the headline is Kingsway, an RPG set in your Windows 95 desktop from hell, and it's an indie RPG that you actually play via a simulated mid-90s Windows like operating system.
That's like the next, that's pixel art and 8-bit taken to the next logical step.
It really is. It looks fun. Like everything, like your inventory's a window, and then the map is a window. It opens up every possible window, just like you're clicking around. I mean, it looks just like an operating system. Like everything is your stats are a window, and when you die, it opens up multiple repeating windows that tell you that you died. So like you had a system crash or something like that. So supposedly this is going to be out in sometime over the summer, and I'm actually really interested to play this. Because I've won the nostalgia factor of a mid-90s OS, just clicking around on that and everything, but two, to combine it with an RPG. So there's a link on the show notes from Geek and Sundry called Kingsway, an RPG set in your Windows 95 desktop, parentheses, from hell, unparentheses. So that's that. Kind of pretty, in Adult Swim, both with their cartoons and TV shows and their games is getting more and more quirky, and they almost kind of remind me of like in the 60s, you had these alternative subversive comics out there like R. Crumb and stuff like that. I'm almost getting that vibe from Adult Swim these days. They're very, very unique and subversive, but also very clever. So I don't know. I'm looking forward to getting my hands on this. And then finally, I feel like this is a little bit of schadenfreude, if I'm saying that word right, taking pleasures in other people's misfortune by sharing these news items, but I think it's an honest news story to cover because Mass Effect is such a huge video game series, right? I mean, Mass Effect is massive. It's huge. Have either of you seen these news articles that have been coming out this week of people reviewing I guess an embargo was lifted for people to report on playing the first few hours of the game. Have either of you seen any of the news that's coming out?
I follow a whole bunch of players on Tumblr of all places.
Yeah,
and
I love
Tumblr has
Tumblr.
been a Twitter with with that.
No pun intended.
No, none whatsoever.
Yeah, no, I actually kind of feel bad because it's getting lambasted. It's getting hammered. People are I put 3 news items up on the show. I'm not going to go on the show notes. I'm not going to go through each one individually, but this gives a sort of an idea of what's happening. And this is almost universal. The first news item is from Rock Paper Shotgun. And it says the first few hours of Mass Effect Andromeda are ... Well, they aren't good. PC Gamer says we have mixed feelings about the first few hours of Mass Effect Andromeda. And then VG247.com says Mass Effect Andromeda's animations have already reduced it to a laughing stock. Those are pretty harsh headlines for a major AAA game like that in a franchise that has the credibility that Mass Effect does. So I'm really surprised. I mean, this isn't just one person, being cranky. This is like all over the place. And I'm really, to be quite honest, surprised, but I guess there's 3 different things that people are talking about, as I understand it. A is they're saying that the writing is poor, saying the writing just isn't very good for a, AAA role-playing game experience, especially compared to the other Mass Effects. B, the quests are very simplistic. Like you're just supposed to assume stuff. There's no real emotional investment. And then 3, evidently the facial animations and the walking animations are weird. Now I'm going by what I'm seeing other people playing or posting or videos they're sharing. what, have you seen any of, it sounds like, Alex, that you're kind of seeing kind of the same thing. Does this surprise you that, a major game like Mass Effect is getting this sort of coverage,
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised that they didn't manage to get more excitement and didn't manage to deliver something that will get people going, because such a popular franchise,
Right.
You don't want to undermine it. And especially, in the animations area, they have enough money.
Right.
Like, I know this from firsthand. Animations are A, hard, B, expensive, and C, all of the above. One more time, right? But like, they have the money and the people to do it. Please.
Right. Well, I wonder. Okay, so here's a very half-baked theory that I have. I have no facts to base this on. This is just a thought I had, because the BioWare is not a bunch of idiots. Mass Effect this is their fourth outing into Mass Effect. There's the thing about when you do robots. Now, I'm not talking about the writing. The writing and the quality of the quest. I'm not speaking to that. I'm talking about these facial animations. You know about the thing with like robot design called the Uncanny Valley, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I wonder if they're running into the Uncanny Valley, because the Uncanny Valley basically says, the closer you get to realistic human-like robot faces, the more people begin to be repelled by them. But then at the very end, when you finally nail it, people will identify with the robot and there's not that repulsion. But there's that valley, if you're looking kind of a curve, right before you get to the point where the robot seems realistic, you have a steep decline in people wanting to look at or deal with the robot. So I wonder if that's what they're running into with these facial animations, because they've advanced the technology further, but it hit that valley and they didn't advance it far enough. Like I said, that is a totally just off the cuff theory, because I can't see them just dropping the ball that hard on the animations.
Well, I mean, from what I've seen, they just don't look very, I don't know.
Well, I saw one look like
much.
this ridiculous, like tubular duck lips or something. I don't know. Yeah. So
no, they don't have that, but like the ones that I've seen, they look a little plasticky.
Yeah. I don't know. We'll see.
I don't know.
I'm surprised though. Yeah. I mean, BioWare and EA cannot be happy. This is not good coverage. There's such a saying as there's no such thing as bad press. In this case, this is not good press at all. It's, people are, and I mean, these aren't just, these are major blogs and news services are expressing like, what the heck is going on here? Those headlines I shared were a very small sampling, of the ones I've seen. So anyway, enough of that. If either of y'all want to add anything to the news stories, you feel more than welcome to. If not, we will move right on to talking about Shy Snake and Spy DNA. So,
yes, please.
Okay. Yeah, no problem. Okay. First of all, before we get to the break, because we got a break coming up, we're capitalists, got to pay the bills. I got it. Why the name Shy Snake? Let's just go ahead and get that out of the way. Where did I
think the reason was that we're actually really are super introverted people, Jason more than me.
Yeah.
And we also like snakes. We keep snakes as pets.
What kind of snakes?
Non-venomous.
What kind of snakes
they can't kill a thing except a mouse, maybe, or sometimes.
I think snakes are beautiful. I'm one of the people. Anytime you go to the zoo, I like to hang out in the reptile house. So
yeah, they're gorgeous and they're so fun to touch. Like they're so smooth but scaly and stuff. I mean, we love them. And so we kind of wanted to have snake in our company name, and
it just went from there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
It just went from there.
All right. Well, Shy Snake. Well, it's a cool name. It stands out. I was just curious what the story was behind that. So,
and the URL was also available.
That's a big one.
Through how many? Yeah, through how many iterations of different snakes we went.
That is a huge. That's a huge consideration these days. That's why so many companies are spelled weird these days, because they want that domain name. That's it's a big thing. Yeah. So okay, well, cool. All right. So your game that you're working on is called Spy DNA, and it's a super realistic tactical shooter kind of role playing game. Very tactical, and it's set I think, is it 2070? Is that when it's set?
2075.
2075. And you're an genetically enhanced spy. So
that's correct.
We'll talk about more about the details after the break, but why spy DNA? Out of everything that you could have done, why spy DNA? Why did y'all want to do spy DNA?
I think what we wanted to do is have a game that we wanted a game that was very realistic when it comes to combat. So for that, I mean, that was a given. That's what we wanted to do. And then to make it a little more interesting, I mean, I personally like science fiction, and I wanted to set the game in the future.
Okay.
And again, we didn't want it to set too far in the future where everything would be like science fiction-y, but where things have advanced far enough that they're better, significantly better, and we can do more things, but people will still recognize a lot of the technology and the ideas behind it, so that we don't have to create too much lore explaining things, that people can intuitively kind of grasp the world. And then we just add those enhancements here and there, like with the genetic enhancements for the spies. We're just like, hey, now you can see infrared because we have learned how to extract the DNA, those genes from somewhere in nature and give this ability to humans.
Right. And that's
one of the other reasons
go ahead.
We wanted to do the genetic enhancements is when you're making a really realistic game, the game tends to be very difficult to play because you're going to die a lot if the combat's truly realistic. So making the players you're playing enhanced gives us a way to offset that and make the game a little more enjoyable and believable.
Right. And we'll talk more about the specifics of the game after the break, which I've got to get us to. But like one of the things that, that was a takeaway for me from playing the game and then also, watching the videos and whatnot is, hit points aren't an all or nothing binary proposition. The more you get hurt, the more you're impaired. And it's also realistic in the sense that encumbrance isn't an all or nothing binary proposition. The more you carry, the more you're impacted. It's not just like suddenly you've crossed this weight limit and now you're encumbered. So that's just a very small taste of the kind of realism that you're bringing to the game. I'm going to get us to a break so we can pay the bills. When we come back, we'll talk about more about, what sets Spy DNA apart from the other games that are out there. And I mean, having played it myself, I can say I've never quite played a game like this that I interact with or that has this kind of rules or whatever. But I want to hear from, you two, like what, we intentionally set out to do this different or to bring like a style of gameplay, maybe people haven't gotten to play before, but we'll do that. We're going to come back with Jason and Alex of Shy Snake Games and their tactical action computer RPG Spy DNA when we come back on Shane Plays Geek Talk Radio, a journey into the things we love.
Comic book lovers, visit thewildstars.com today. From the mind of author and comic book industry expert Michael Tierney, it's not just a comic book, it's a comic book novel. The Wild Stars is sci-fi and so much more. Learn the explanations behind UFOs and space gods. This isn't the Twilight Zone. This is the region of the Milky Way galaxy known as the Wild Stars. We guarantee you've never read anything like it. The complete comic book novel took 20 years to tell, with one reviewer noting, the story of the Wild Stars stretches ambitiously across space and time, from small-town murders to the destruction of planets, with every event given multiple layers of meaning. If you haven't read The Wild Stars, you're missing out. Visit thewildstars.com today.
The die is cast.
Plunge into worlds of fantastic adventure where dragons lie and the undead stalk the shades of your mind's imagines. Where creatures of legend plunder wealth through the horror of their passage. Monsters grim and foul hold the ecstasy of gold and the renown of glory. All this and more awaits you and your friends in the unlimited, fantastic world of the Castles and Crusades role-playing game from Trollord Games. Visit your friendly local game store or Trollord.com to get your copy today. A rules-light, adaptable game that has stood the test of time. 12 years in constant publication with no new additions, Castles and Crusades is the original easy-to-play attribute check system. Join us and unleash your imagination. Visit your friendly local game store or Trollord.com to get your copy of Castles and Crusades today. Shane Plays Radio is blessed to have sponsors, and we appreciate them very much. However, did you know that you can also support the show as an individual for as little as $1 an episode? Simply go to patreon.com/ShanePlays.
Hey, welcome back to Shane Plays Geek Talk Radio, a journey into the things we love. I'm your host, Shane Stacks. Thanks for listening in, whether you're listening in live on 96.5 FM The Answer in Little Rock, or if you're listening on the live stream at 96.5 FMTheAnswer.com, or if you're listening by podcast or Krypton Radio. Welcome back to the show. Want to give a quick shout out. I don't know if he's listening or not, but we retweeted the show to make sure people know about it. Nick from Pixel Metal may remember that he was on a few weeks ago talking about his indie game Sombrero, and he retweeted the show notes and everything for today, and I really appreciate you, Nick, if you're listening. And speaking of indie game devs, we've got Jason and Alex of Shy Snake Games on, and we're talking about their realistic action. Well, it's not action, it's more of a tactical, but I guess I don't want to say action because that action RPG has a different thought to it, but it's a very tactical, realistic computer RPG called Spy DNA. As we talked about right before the break, it's set in 2075, so it's far enough in the future that they can, do a little bit different stuff with the character, make them a little tougher, maybe genetically altered, that kind of thing to see in the dark, but not so far in the future that you have to reset the complete lore and teach the player the lore of the game. So we were talking before the break. I said, I was hoping after the break to hear more from them about what makes Spy DNA unique. So having said that, Alex and Jason, what are your thoughts on that? Like, what are you doing in this game that either A, you've never seen in another game, or B, you're like, I wish games would do this? What are you trying to get in there?
Well, I think the big area where we're different is we approached the gameplay for a tactical game from a simulation perspective rather than the traditional game perspective. So we tried to make everything behave as much as we could as it would in the real world. So that's why you see a lot of the different mechanics in terms of how you aim at a target or how you make your attacks. They ended up being very different than you see in most games.
And with that, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead.
I say that I never personally have used an aiming mechanic like what's in Spy DNA. I've done the demo, watched you explain it on your people really need to go watch the videos on YouTube. You can get through on your website kind of explaining, and the website it's just shysnake.com, right?
Yep. Or spydna.com.
There you go. Yeah. I've got shysnake.com, I think, linked on the show notes. And I've also linked to your Steam Greenlight page. Congratulations for getting greenlit.
Yay!
Yeah, congratulations.
So excited.
Yeah, that is
so excited.
As we were talking about before the show, one of the reasons that I wanted to have you on was to help make people aware of the Greenlight campaign. But I'm still really tickled to be talking to you. I want to bring exposure to what you're doing. But talking about aiming, so when you aim, you get like a little visual of the target that you're shooting at, and you get a green circle that basically tells you the area that your bullets could possibly go into. And then the more time, depending on what type of gun you're using, I guess your skill, whether you're standing, kneeling, or prone, how much time you spend aiming, you can reduce that area. Yeah,
and what we used, the fancy word for this is circular error probable. And basically the different color circles, there are like 3 green circles, and the farther inside you get, the darker the circles, right? That means that the more shots, So the outside circle is where 99% of all shots go. Then the next one is 90. So, and then 50% of all shots will end up in the tightest green circle. And then, of course, the red dot in the middle is the center where you're aiming at.
Right.
And we're using actual ballistics to determine the bullet trajectory. It loses it loses energy over distance through air friction, and if it goes through things, then it also loses energy. So that's how we calculate armor. It's not like armor is automatically minus 10 points damage.
Right.
It's more like it may stop the bullet altogether.
Right.
And our genetically modified spies have some of them have underskin armor that is subdermal armor. Right. And in some cases they become very, very hard to shoot. However, if you do shoot them somewhere in the face or in the eye,
right,
wherever they don't have their armor, they will still go down. And that's kind of where we're unique also, that instead of just giving you a bunch of points for damage,
right,
we calculate precisely what kind of damage you take depending on what organs, muscles, and bones were hit in 3D. So, and
right,
in a couple weeks,
I want to make sure people hear that. You're calculating the area of the body, the muscles, the organs, the tissue that's getting hit from a 3D perspective. So the angle of the bullet can matter.
Yes, it does.
Yeah. This is what I'm saying. I kind of stressed at the beginning of the show when I was introducing you, this is a simulation that can be played as a game. I mean, there's a lot going on under the hood that I don't think other games are taking into account. But Alex was mentioning when you have a gun and you're looking at it in your inventory, you can open up information about it and it will show you charts that show you, damage over time and distance. It's really, really in-depth stuff. So how many like rifles and pistols are in the game right now?
I think we're just over 20 at this point. We're still adding a couple here and there. But at this point, we have a pretty good variety for any use case you might need.
Yeah, we have pistols, handguns, machine guns, and everything in between. Submachine guns. And this is where sci-fi element comes in. We have, conventional weapons, the Kalachov line.
Right.
And then we have the Magnetar Gauss rifles and pistols.
Right.
And we also have flechette guns. So we have some technology that is currently in development by the military, but it's not yet there where a human can just pick it up and run around with it. It's really heavy. So we have rail guns and things like that.
So
that people can just
go
take
ahead.
with them on the battlefield.
That is crazy. And another thing that is realistic about this game is recoil is taking into effect. So when you're paused when you aim, right? You select your target, you select, where you want to aim at, how much time you want to spend aiming, and then you also spend how many bursts or bullets or whatever you want to fire off. And I saw in one of the demos that, some rifles or whatever have less recoil than others. So if you have if you have a high recoil rifle, each subsequent shot is going to be a little bit more off target. Whereas if, it's a low recoil rifle, your shot groups will be more, more tightly grouped. So that's just another example, of the amount of realism that you're trying to go into in this game. But where are you getting your info? Where are you researching to say, okay, this rifle has this power over this distance and this recoil? I mean, are you using Jane's references, military references or something? Where do you get this kind of information?
So some of it actually comes from looking up military references online. I actually spent some time on YouTube. There's a couple shooters on there that show their world record attempts.
Okay.
So when we're looking at, what is the best someone can do, we actually looked up some of the world records that they had set for different situations.
Right.
Same with movement speed. We actually looked up, what is the fastest a human can move, and we used that to calibrate the running and jogging speeds of the characters.
Nice. So go ahead.
It's actually research driven.
Okay. And this may be, I could be wrong, this may be the first RPG I've ever heard of where I had a smell statistic attribute.
It's possible. And we will use it right now you can't use it in the demo,
right?
But in the final shipping game, you will be able to use your sense of smell to detect, let's say, a gas leak so that you don't shoot in a room that's filled with combustible gas. Or you can use it to detect traps or something like that.
That is wild.
Detect poison in the air.
Yeah, so you've got statistics for, if I remember right, vision, hearing, and smell.
Yep.
That is crazy. All right. Just to give people, the more I look into this game, I think I even posted something on the Codex last night saying, that the more I learn about this game, the more interested I become. You're really trying to do something different here, but not different just for different sake. You're like trying to be, really, realistic and give people, maybe an experience they haven't had before. Here's another couple of examples that I noticed. One is there's not a hit point system per se. There's kind of, your character can be sick. So even though he's got quote unquote all of his hit points, he doesn't feel good or she doesn't feel good. And that can affect the gameplay. Or you can be in tip top health. You can have all is it fatigue or endurance? That's kind of like hit points. But if you take a headshot, you're dead.
That's right.
Doesn't matter how many hit
down
points
you go.
Yeah, down you go. I also saw something in here, or I heard mentioned, I haven't seen an actual example of it yet. I heard a mention about a stress reaction. The characters can get stressed out and go into a rage.
So, yeah, there's... it probably will not affect the player characters that much, but the AI system for things like suppression, basically, they should have fear. So they won't hopefully react in a robotic way like you see in a lot of games. But rather than just having something like a suppression skill, we want people to react like they would probably react in the real world from being shot at with machine guns. Most people aren't just going to pop back up and shoot back.
Right.
They're probably going to stay behind cover and think about what they want to do next.
Yeah, they're going to look at their friend and go, they're shooting at us.
Yeah.
What?
Or if they see their buddy on the ground bleeding out, they may think twice before they shoot back.
Yeah, before they jump up. Yeah, I hear you. Yeah. All right. So it's not the same mechanic, but it's interesting that I know Darkest Dungeon that came out a year or two ago, it basically as the party is dungeon crawling, they develop neurosis from the post-traumatic stress of all of these, dungeon encounters they're having. So another question I had was, I don't think I've ever played a game where you had sort of a 3D overhead third-person view, but then in the bottom left, there's an inset window that shows your first-person view.
Yes, we call it the body cam.
Body cam, okay.
Because our game is so tactical and you want to know where your shots go, the terrain is never completely flat. And we use realistic terrain, not just squares, so that if you're prone and you're shooting, you may as well be shooting into a side of a hill. Because from above, when you're flying your camera from bird's eye view,
right? Yeah,
it's a straight shot. But if you look from the person's view, from the actual, playing characters view, you may see that you're shooting into a side of a hill and you probably need to move yourself to a better firing position.
Okay.
Or maybe it's good for you because you just got shot and you're recovering and then you can take cover. And this way, it's much easier to assess at the same time without flying the camera directly, close to the ground. You can have both views at the same time.
Okay. So, I mean, was that something that you envisioned right out the gate, or is that something that during play you're like, we really need to have both views here?
We actually thought this was going to be when we were going to Kickstarter, we thought this was going to be like something that, if we hit goal X, we're going to do this because it was going to be quite a lot of work. But then we liked the idea so much that Jason just went ahead and implemented it.
Yeah. Well, I've never, I'm not, it takes a few minutes to get used to, but once you get used to it, I'm like, oh, I really like interacting with the game like this. But it takes, because you're programmed from other games on how to interact. Because it's not isometric. It's third person 3D where you can do quite a lot with the camera. There's buttons that let you immediately recenter yourself either from a low level or, a high level. And then, you're running around interacting with people, but you can get a very large bird's eye overview of the map you're on very easily. And then, get back down to on a level. And then at any time you can see what's in your character's field of vision. So it works pretty well. And you can click, you can run, jog, sprint, walk. You can interact with people, talk to them. It works well, but it did take me a second to get used to. But once I got used to it, I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. So we're coming up on another break here in a few minutes. But before we get there, speaking of Kickstarter and Steam Greenlight and all that, what are your plans for the game? Like, do you have? I mean, are you going to go like the early access route? Are you going to do another Kickstarter in the future? I mean, what is your plan for, I guess, if not profitability or at least breaking even or getting the game out? What are your thoughts on when and how you're going to get the game out to the sweating, eager masses?
I hope they are sweating and eager.
Yeah.
Early access is the answer. In a couple days, we're going to formulate a plan because we just literally got greenlit. So we're going to talk to Steam and see what Valve actually, how much are they going to enable us, how this works, if they have any additional rules about early access. And then we will know more. And then as soon as we think we have a viable beta, we will go to early access so that people can support us even as they get to enjoy the game.
All right.
And we're pretty close. I mean, we're talking a matter of weeks. We want to have the final game released somewhere in late fall, early winter this year.
Of this year. Okay.
Yeah.
So that being said, do you have, and if either A, you don't have it, or B, you don't feel comfortable discussing yet, that's fine. But do you have an idea of what the game might cost and how many hours of gameplay you anticipate in the final version?
So final hours of gameplay, I would say at least 40, probably more.
Okay.
Because now that we've implemented, when we were originally estimating the number of hours, we were still making handmade maps. Now that we're doing procedural maps, we can make many, many more maps. And the maps become almost infinitely replayable because while in the demo they don't do it, in early access they will generate at runtime.
Wait a minute.
So that every time you load a mission, you will get a slightly different map with things and enemies placed in slightly different places. So the hours are only limited by, when the player will finally get bored.
Right.
Hopefully never. The price point, I mean, we're thinking mid to high 20s.
Okay. That's fair enough. Yeah.
It's not set and, don't hold us to it because Valve say that they want to be part of the price determination process. So,
really? Valve gets involved. Okay. I have no idea. I don't even know how many votes do you have to get greenlit? I don't know how any of that works.
It seems to vary.
Okay.
Basically, you get enough votes, and then Steam seems to take a look at it and make a decision.
Oh, so the votes are to get their attention.
That we can tell.
Oh, okay. So the votes get Steam/Valve's attention. Oh, this is getting a lot of votes. Now let's go review it. So it's not just like you get 1,000 votes and you're in. It's not.
Yeah,
okay.
It's much less about the number of votes. I think they also look at the ratio of yes to no. And after 2 weeks, we maintained a more than 50% positive,
Good.
Just a touch over, like 51, right. I think, when they finally greenlit us.
Well, I'm glad you're moving forward just because, I mean, one of the things I like to see, I like to support people even if I don't like the genre, and I'm digging this. I mean, I think this is a game I'd like to play. Even if I don't necessarily like the genre or so, I like to support people who are trying something different, not just different for different sake, because then you just end up with some goofy game with some, mechanic that's a gimmick. But I mean, this is the level of detail you're going to here, and And, you both, I didn't even get a chance to get into yet, you're both were Google employees, and you both have very impressive backgrounds.
Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, you got, both have very impressive backgrounds and decided to, go back to your love of game design. Just as an example here, Alex has spent a lot of her career building user and developer communities for companies like Red Hat, VMware, and Google. You may have heard of those people. And then Jason has worked at B. Are we talking about BOS, the B box? Jason, is that what we're talking about?
Yes, I wrote the graphics subsystem, the 3D acceleration for BOS.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. There was a guy I was in Japan with in the 90s. I can't remember his last name, but he was in the Air Force, and I think he had something to do with the BOS or the B box. But yeah, you did the OpenGL hardware driver, wrote 3DFX and ATI Radeon drivers. You led the team that created that. This is, wow. Listen to this, folks. Jason led the team that created the CPU and GPU compute runtimes for Android OS at Google. Good grief,
that's
man.
what he did.
Yeah, good grief, man.
He's just sitting here going,
yeah,
I'm embarrassed.
Yeah, well, I'm impressed. So, y'all had very, impressive backgrounds, and you're following your love of game design. So I think that's cool. I'm going to get us to a break. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about Spy DNA and Shy Snake. And, again, appreciate your time being here. We come back, maybe we can learn and get an idea of what kind of missions your futuristic spy will go on right here on Shane Plays Geek Talk Radio.
Comic book lovers, visit thewildstars.com today. From the mind of author and comic book industry expert Michael Tierney, it's not just a comic book, it's a comic book novel. The Wild Stars is sci-fi and so much more. Learn the explanations behind UFOs and space gods. This isn't the Twilight Zone. This is the region of the Milky Way galaxy known as the Wild Stars. We guarantee you've never read anything like it. The complete comic book novel took 20 years to tell, with one reviewer noting, the story of the Wild Stars stretches ambitiously across space and time, from small-town murders to the destruction of planets, with every event given multiple layers of meaning. If you haven't read The Wild Stars, you're missing out. Visit thewildstars.com today. The die is cast. Plunge into worlds of fantastic adventure where dragons lie and the undead stalk the shades of your mind's imagines. Where creatures of legend plunder wealth through the horror of their passage. Monsters grim and foul hold the ecstasy of gold and the renown of glory. All this and more awaits you and your friends in the unlimited, fantastic world of the Castles and Crusades role-playing game from Trollord Games. Visit your friendly local game store or Trollord.com to get your copy today. A rules-light, adaptable game that has stood the test of time. 12 years in constant publication with no new additions. Castles and Crusades is the original, easy-to-play attribute check system. Join us and unleash your imagination. Visit your friendly local game store or Trollord.com to get your copy of Castles and Crusades today. Shane Plays Radio is blessed to have sponsors, and we appreciate them very much. However, did you know that you can also support the show as an individual for as little as $1 an episode? Simply go to patreon.com/Shane Plays.
Hey, welcome back to Shane Plays Geek Talk Radio, a journey into the things we love. I'm Shane Stacks, your host. Hope you're listening in, or I know you're listening in, but whether you're listening in by, on 96.5 FM The Answer here in Central Arkansas, or online at 96.5fmtheanswer.com, or by podcast or via Krypton Radio, you're getting a treat because we're talking with Alex and Jason of Shy Snake Games about their cool. It's a tactical, somewhat futuristic combat RPG simulation that can be played as a game. It's very, very realistic, very cool. We'll get an idea of the kind of missions your character can go on here in a second. But first, I want to throw a little bit of love at one of our sponsors. And folks, don't forget, you can call in if you want it, if you're listening live at 501-823-0965, or you can tweet me at Shane Plays. But first, here's a little love to a sponsor. Some goblins are your friends. Game Goblins is Central Arkansas's premier retailer of Magic the Gathering, Warhammer 40K, board games, card games, RPGs, miniatures, and hobby accessories. Call Game Goblins at 501-224-GAME or visit them online at gamegoblins.com. That's 501-224-GAME or gamegoblins.com. For all of your gaming needs, I heartily recommend Game Goblins. Make sure to check out their customer loyalty program that rewards you based on your actual purchases. Game Goblins earns your business and keeps it. They also have events and plenty of space every day of the week. First-time customers mention Shane Plays and receive $10 off your purchase of $50 or more. Call Game Goblins at 501-224-GAME or visit them online at gamegoblins.com. Don't forget they have a new website they've launched, so go check that out. Tell them Shane Plays sent you. All right, so we are back with Alex and Jason of Shy Snake Games, a married, independent team of game developers with impressive histories of their own. I mean, Jason here started writing games on the TRS-80, Model 3, Apple IIc, and then PCs. Jason, the first computer I had in my house in the 80s was the TI-99-4A. I don't know if you ever messed with those or not, but that was mine. Of course, all my friends had Commodores and everything, and I had an Amiga before moving over to PCs. And then Alex, they're both game designers, developers, but Alex is a community marketing professional, open source believer. She spent most of her career building user and developer communities for companies like Red Hat, VMware, and Google, as well as startups. And then, as I mentioned before the break, Jason has a history with BIOS, the B-Box, and then he also led the team that created the CPU and GPU compute runtime for Android OS at Google. So did y'all two meet at Google by any chance?
No, actually, we met at a driving event. We used to spend a lot of time autocrossing cars.
Oh, yeah. I saw one. I think Alex said she's a race car driver in her Twitter profile. Wow. Yeah. You guys, yeah, that's pretty cool. So you're worked at Google.
Yeah, we forgot about that. Sorry.
Yeah. And you race cars while in your spare time. So real quick, you got about 3 minutes left in the show. Can you give us just like about a minute or so and give us an idea of the, like in broad strokes, the kind of missions that the characters will play in Spy DNA?
So typically we will have three kinds of missions in the game. The low intensity mission is the kind where you kind of see a lot of civilians. It could be like in the middle of a populated area in the city. And there you want to try to be covert because, you don't want to be running around in full battle gear in downtown somewhere, scaring civilians.
Right.
And then the police get cold and then, your agency will deny all knowledge and down you go.
Right.
So.
Right. Yeah. You're expendable.
They went rogue.
Yeah. Yeah. You're expendable.
So low intensity stealth is good. You got to look like a civilian and try to accomplish your goals with little or no violence or very targeted violence that doesn't get noticed. Right. And then, so medium intensity missions will be where you're like in a suburbs or something where you can be a little bit more overt about your violence, but still you probably don't want to be bringing a rocket launcher to a little cul-de-sac.
Right.
And then high intensity missions are the ones that are my favorite.
Yeah.
Because I like bringing rocket
say hello
launchers,
to my little friend and start blasting everybody, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. God. I love blowing them away.
Yeah.
And so those missions will be set somewhere like in a desert or in a forested area. And by the way, our maps will go up to a square kilometer and maybe even a little more.
Yeah, I zoomed out on the maps last night, and the map you start in at your base is quite big. So, if you go look at all the edges of it. So.
Yeah, and the base island houses a shooting range with 1,000-meter range. So.
I saw that. Yeah, you go anywhere from like 20 meters up to 1,000. I did a lot of playing around with the weapons. Well, I've got to draw the show to the close. Folks, this is Alex and Jason of Shy Snake Games. Their game is Spy DNA. Super cool, realistic, tactical computer RPG, futuristic spies. Go check it out. It's on Steam Greenlight. Should be out before the end of the year. I got to do this to you both. I have the bad joke of the week, so you're my victims. Are you ready?
All right.
Okay.
We're ready.
All right. What do you call a fake noodle?
I don't know. What do you call it?
An impasta. Oh, yeah. Zach's in there dry heaving. Oh, yeah. Bad joke of the week. Jason, Alex, it's been a pleasure. Hope to talk to you again in the future, but regardless, good luck with Spy DNA and Shy Snake Games. Folks, we'll catch you next time on Shane Plays Geek Talk Radio.
Here we are. I'm Hadley, internal medicine, and Dr. Lafont, communicable diseases, Dr. Boyer, bacteriology, and Dr. Stinson, Marston, and Gill of the Northampton Trauma Institute, and Dr. Imhouse of the Zurich Relief Fund. These are our newly arrived surgeons, Drs. Trowbridge and Greenbaum.
Doctor? Doctor?
Doctor?
Doctor?
Doctor?
Doctor?
Doctor?
Doctor?
Doctor? Doctor? Doctor?
Doctor?
Doctor? Doctor? Doctor?
Doctor?
Doctor?
Doctor?
Doctor?
Doctor?
Doctor? Doctor? Doctor?
And doctor.
Well, we miss anyone?
Why don't you gentlemen relax? The tribe's planning a raid on a Soviet tank division tomorrow. There'll be plenty for us to do then. Doctors?
Doctor? 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 Doctor?
Doctor?
Doctor.
Doctor?
Doctor? Doctor? Doctor? Doctor? Doctor? Doctor? Doctor? Doctor? Doctor? We're not doctors.
Shane Plays Radio is blessed to have sponsors, and we appreciate them very much. However, did you know that you can also support the show as an individual for as little as $1 an episode? Simply go to patreon.com/ShanePlays.